Hi folks, so with this video I wanted to talk a little bit about homelessness in London, Ontario. In particular, my plans are to share some of your thoughts regarding the simulation exercise, Hobson's Choice, and then give you some London statistics. So this will be a relatively short video, but I want to talk first about some of your reactions to Hobson's Choice. I am so appreciative that you posted a lot of really interesting things in the forums, and I wanted to share some of those thoughts here. And one common theme that I saw was that people found that it was really surprising how few choices there were. And I thought that this post was particularly eloquent in the highlighted part there. One small issue can cause a domino effect, which ultimately leads to being homeless. Right? So, one of the challenges, like it was mentioned in the earlier video, is that for some individuals, if they have, precarious employment, if they have health issues, it doesn't take much for them to slip into homelessness. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was talking about some of the ways that, you could make money. Well, sometimes people say, well, why don't they just get a job, right? There's going to be a lot of barriers that we talked about with that, including transportation to and from the job. If you don't have a place to stay, you likely don't have a source of, clean water, clean clothes. And in the simulation that you saw, if they did day labor, they only made $15 for a half day. That's not sufficient to get a place. Okay, so these statistics for the $15 per half day, I believe that is based on UK statistics, but similarly, you can see that there's no way that's going to be sufficient, right? The other thing that I thought was interesting was how important family is when looking into homelessness and helping somebody avoid that, right? If they have a family member that they can live with, then that often helps mitigate some of those issues, right? If you have an unsupportive peer group or family, then it's going to be really challenging. Finally, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was how we were kind of challenging some of the stereotypes. Um, so here, the main takeaway that I had was the fact that despite what society has shown, homelessness is not always induced by the individual, i.e., not all homeless people are addicts or any other disrespectful stereotype. It also showed me that even though a person may look like they have given up and accepted their fate, they may still be fighting their battle. What a really nice way to think about that. So I'm glad that you guys went through with that simulation, and I hope that gave you some ideas thinking about this. Now, for London, I want to give you some basic statistics. Again, we've talked about homelessness kind of when we've touched on a number of different subjects in this course, but I wanted to draw your attention to this website at the bottom, homelesshub.ca. There's a community profile there, and you can find community profiles for a lot of different regions in Ontario by going to that particular website. So that's where I pulled this information. So population in London, we're almost at 500,000. Our unemployment rate is pretty standard. It's about 5%. So that's people who want to work, who are able-bodied, can work, but haven't been able to find employment. Okay, so that's not including like seniors or people who are not actively seeking employment. The minimum wage is $14 an hour. That's gone up quite a bit. When I was, in high school, I remember the minimum wage, I think I started at $7.20 an hour, maybe. So it's almost doubled since then, which is good. London has a number of shelters. You may have heard of some of them. There are shelters that are specifically for women. There are shelters that are specifically for men. There are those shelters for women escaping domestic abuse as well. And in those 5 shelters, there's a total of 372 beds. Okay, so that's how many people, if those shelters were completely full, that's how many people could be accommodated. Now, if we look at this, you can see why this is a problem. So 2,670 unique individuals were accessing emergency shelter. So if we compare that to the last slide, and we saw that there is 352 spaces, you can see that why that is an issue. 411 individuals were accessing emergency shelter more than 10 times. So you can imagine that this would be chronic homelessness. Of those individuals that identify as homeless, almost 60% were staying in emergency or domestic violence shelter. Some of them are what people would say couch surfing. 18% were staying at someone else's place. 6% are staying in the public space. So even though we might see a lot of homeless individuals in different regions of London, this isn't always representative of how many homeless individuals actually exist. If you look, there's actually only 6% of homeless individuals staying in public spaces. And of those experiencing homelessness in London, 62% are those that are chronically homeless. So in the simulation we looked at before, I talked about, applying for social assistance being one way to kind of get out of that. And you saw some of the frustration associated with it, that there's a big backlog and caseload associated with it. The other thing to think about is actually how much money somebody gets for social assistance. So in London, the social assistance for renters or homeowners, okay, so if you are seeking social assistance so that you can get a home, and remember, keep in mind that sometimes you may need to have an address to actually get this social assistance. So if you're of no fixed address, right, which most homeless individuals are, then applying for social assistance and having that kind of identification can be really hard. So the social assistance for renters or homeowners individually is $733. Now, if we look at just the average cost of rent for a bachelor apartment in London, $669. That doesn't even leave somebody with $100 for food, let alone if they need transportation, clothing, etc. So you can see how this kind of mismatch is going to be really challenging. So some ways that have been identified to fix this is different rent that's geared towards income to help individuals with this. There's a number of different housing complexes in London that have rent geared to income so that people can afford to stay in homes. But as you can see, this is a really complex problem, right? On the next little video, what we're going to be talking about is some of the health issues associated with homelessness, in particular chronic homelessness.